Jackie Perrin.
Hi, I'm Jim Nunn. Any dictionary defines charity as the giving of help or money to those in need. And that's certainly the view most people share. But here's something that may surprise you. Most of that next donation you make may not go to someone in need. Instead, it could go right into the coffers of a fundraising company.
It's only through the generosity of people like you that
a donation of,
with a gift of $100.
How do you feel about making such a commitment?
I have to think about that.
Can we count on you?
Help us out with a $50 donation.
Help and rescue these orphans.
Thank you for your very generous gift of $25.
Well, how about whatever you can contribute? How's that?
Among the many calls we all get, one of them might be asking you to support the Canadian Wheelchair Basketball Association. These are the top players in Canada, athletes who work hard to compete internationally. But wheelchair basketball doesn't get a lot of gate receipts. The sport depends on government grants and on donations from the public.
Do you happen to have a few minutes just to talk to
The
me?
association hires a company called GWE, a telemarketing firm, to do some of its fundraising. GWE telemarketed the tickets for this game. People buy even if they don't go. It's for a good cause, after all. However, here's the deal. GWE gets 60% of the money. The Basketball Association, the charity, gets only 40%. Executive Director Reg McClellan feels that's fair. But bottom line, this is a for-profit company taking 60% of your gross ticket sales. Why does the organization, your organization, get so little?
For us, we've made the decision that we can't do this job for that price, and we think that it's a good deal for us.
It's typical of the kind of arrangement many charities have with GWE. Some charities rely almost totally on telemarketing for their fundraising. The translation of our national anthem into sign language, a project of the Canadian Cultural Society of the Deaf. It's a national charity based in Edmonton, one that also uses GWE. Charmaine Letourneau is the Society's president. Let me ask you now about fundraising. Why did your society turn to GWE?
Well, we had so many ideas for projects that we wanted to do. And in the past, we had tried to get money in various ways. Car washes, parties. But we never collected enough money for our big projects.
For several years, the Canadian Cultural Society of the Deaf had a contract with GWE that gave GWE between 60 and 70% of the money. How do you think a donor would react knowing that out of the $10 donation he or she makes, you get only $3?
If I were to donate the money myself, I would think twice about this, yes. But at the same time, that's the only way that we could get the money.
Yes, but how much money?
Some of the costs associated with fundraising.
In addition to hiring a telemarketer, the Society has a fundraising consultant who also has been paid on commission. Add some incidental fundraising expenses, and there isn't a lot left over. For example, in 1993, the Society received almost $1.5 million in donations. But after expenses, there was only $140,000 left for the Society to do its work. And in 1994, the total donated was $1.2 million. After expenses, the charity had just $120,000 left over. Just 10%.
Onus then.
Consultant Bert Stevens defends his cut, a commission of 6.5%.
I guess the easiest way to explain it is that if I want to raise, I make sure that we raise more money. And so the onus is there to raise as much money as possible.
To that end, in 1995, the Society began a different arrangement with GWE. Instead of a percentage, GWE now gets a per-hour fee. It doesn't seem there's been much improvement. According to Stevens, last year the fundraising campaign raised $750,000 in donations. GWE's share was about $550,000. Stevens says his share was $50,000. Just let me put it to you so that I'm clear. GWE gets about $550,000. You get about $50,000. And the Society, for its work, gets about $150,000. Is that reasonable?
I think based on the current situation, it is reasonable. I think that if any one of your viewers can come forward and show us an alternative, that we can get the same amount of money or larger and not have that great expense involved, I would be welcome. I'd love to hear about it. If somebody wants to come forward and offer some opportunity that the deaf themselves can raise all that money and put me out of a job, that's fine too.
Two issues here. First, the fact that a telemarketer has been getting most of the money donated to the charity. And second, this business of commission-based fundraising by both a telemarketer and a fundraising consultant. It's a practice that many in the charitable community question.
I'm completely opposed to commission-based fundraising.
Ken Wyman is a consultant in Toronto. When he's retained by a charity, he gets a flat fee for his services.
That if the donors find out, and I believe the charities must be open books to the public, if the donors find out that somebody's paid on a commission, they're going to be irritated. If I give you $10, you mean this person gets a cut, and if I give you 100, they get a bigger cut? I don't like that. Most people don't.
But some charities like commission-based fundraising, because for them, it means there's no risk involved. When GWE offers a commission-based contract, it guarantees the charity will not lose money. But those who oppose this type of arrangement say that when there's no risk, the charity won't worry about the telemarketing costs. We wanted to talk to GWE about all of this, but no one from the company would consent to an interview. Len Wolstenholme in Calgary used to be a vice president of GWE. Now he's a volunteer on the board of Epilepsy Canada. Epilepsy Canada, though, has hired GWE for the last 3 years to do its telemarketing fundraising. 2 of those years, the payment was a commission. Why does Epilepsy Canada require a third-party fundraiser at all?
We used a contract fundraiser for a very specific purpose. We wanted to grow our donor database. We had to go out and very aggressively find new donors to support our cause.
In 93-94, GWE raised a total in donations of $650,000. But of that, Epilepsy Canada got to keep only $130,000. The next year, the figures were similar. But Wolstenholme says that simply reflects the cost of acquiring new donors.
If you have never given to the charity that you're talking to, if you've never given to them before, you can expect that a minimum of $1, and sometimes much more than that, of every dollar that you raise will be spent just to raise that money from you as a new donor. And that's the reality of life in the charitable sector.
I very seldom would recommend that a charity use telemarketing to acquire new donors. Very seldom. Telemarketing is a fine way of reaching people who have been contributors, people who used to be donors, and try and bring them back. Some of the most effective telemarketing is done by the universities and their alumni associations. And in those cases, the calls are friendly. They're usually done by a student. Maybe it's by somebody who went to school the same year you did. The cost to raise $1 is much, much lower.
This is Kids Help Phone.
Kids Help Phone is a charity that tried the telemarketing route, but has since abandoned it for the most part.
I'm just wondering if it might be a good idea for you and Mom to sit down and talk about really how you feel.
Launched in 1989, Kids Help Phone grew rapidly and needed good sources of revenue. It needed to develop its donor list, so it hired a Toronto company called RMG. It's also a for-profit fundraiser, though it doesn't work on commission. RMG did telemarketing and direct mail for the charity. Kids Help Phone Executive Director Heather Sproul says there were a number of reasons for a change in strategy.
We determined that while the program was reasonably successful, it wasn't working as well for us as we thought it would, point number one. We were also concerned about telemarketing activity. This was, as reported to us by our donors and prospective donors, very aggressive. It felt to some of our donors that it was intrusive, etc. And we began to have a concern about how our donors experienced telemarketing activity.
Kids Help Phone also found the telemarketing program expensive. For example, its financial statements for 1993 show that the telemarketing and direct mail campaign brought in donations of $2 million. The cost of that, $1.6 million. Compare that with their special events fundraising. including events like their annual gala dinner organized by volunteers. Revenue from special events was $1.1 million at a cost of $300,000.
And
The Canadian Hemophilia Society, a press conference concerning the Creever Commission and the inquiry into tainted blood.
Approximately 250 Canadians infected with HIV through tainted blood have died.
With so many of its members victims of a contaminated blood supply, the demands on this charity are considerable. To meet those demands, the Hemophilia Society puts a lot of resources into telemarketing. The Society has been using RMG, the same company Kids Help Phone no longer uses. In contrast to Kids Help Phone, the Hemophilia Society's financial statements lack the kind of detail that spells out how much it spends on fundraising. We tried to obtain that information from the Society's president, Durhan Wong Rieger.
How much does telemarketing cost the organization?
Well, I think overall, it's a hard question to say. In the end, of course, it provides us with a substantial portion of our revenues. So in the end, it's a very cost-effective way for us in order to continue to raise monies.
But can you give me figures for what you raised and what it cost you to raise it?
Again, I think if you look in terms of our net revenues from telemarketing,
We never did get the answer to our question. What we do know is that the Hemophilia Society is, year after year, continuing to do costly donor acquisition. And something else we discovered about the Hemophilia Society's campaign and other campaigns run by RMG. Suppose when you're called, you ask how much of your money actually goes to the charity. This is a script used by the telemarketer. And the answer the person calling is required to give to your question is truly imaginative.
When asked by a prospective donor how much of the money goes directly to the work of the charity, the employee of the telemarketing firm is required to say as follows, and I quote, "We are very proud to say that by putting your gift on a credit card, over 87% of your donation will go directly to the Hemophilia Society." Are you aware of that?
I think, again, if we talk about the contributions of a donor, not just over a period of 1 year, that if you took the contribution of that donor over that period of time, we have to talk about, what is going to be the contribution of a donor over the period of giving.
So are you saying that's true?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I don't know the right answer to that, to be honest with you. I can't say yes or no to it as a question. I don't know.
Charities have been sucked in to a dream of easy money. It started with the government, and over the last 20 years, we got the idea that if you needed money, you asked the government and it fell from the sky. As that began to dry up, charities that didn't really like fundraising started looking for other quick and easy solutions. And so telemarketers would come in, and in some cases, when they have no other fundraising systems in place, if they get $50,000, $60,000, that's great for the charity. The fact that the telemarketing firm actually raised $360,000 and kept $300,000 for itself, well, they recognize that that's sad, but it's still $60,000 that they wouldn't have had any other way. I wish that they would not do that.
Oh, come on!
Here is a charity that agrees completely. The Alberta Northern Lights Wheelchair Basketball Society based in Edmonton. This charity does not use contract fundraisers.
Would you like to help us out again this year?
Northern Lights does its own telephone fundraising, always has, and is managing to keep the costs of fundraising to about 25 cents on the dollar. There's a problem, though. Several other disabled sports groups in the city are clients of a for-profit fundraiser. It results in confusion and wasteful duplication. Northern Lights would like to get all those groups to join forces and fundraise together, put the private fundraisers out of business. Otherwise, says Executive Director Paul Conrad, the charities won't survive in an increasingly competitive environment.
If we don't begin to become more concerned with all aspects of our operation, not as the Alberta Northern Lights, but as a charitable sector in our community, then there's nobody else out there that's going to do that. That's not going to happen for us. We need to be able to do those kinds of things for ourselves. And that means learning how to fundraise.
But in the meantime, what do you do now if you're asked for a donation?
Inquire about
Heather
the work
Sproul
the
has some
charity
basic
does.
advice.
If you feel good about the work the charity does, then I would urge you to ask questions about how the organization is managed, what kinds of fundraising activities are undertaken, how money is spent, what its short-term and long-term objectives are, because you should want to hear that over time, particularly a new charity, is aiming to raise more and more dollars for its cause, not for its infrastructure.
Would you give money over the telephone?
I have, not now.
Why have you changed your mind?
It feels too impulsive to me. And giving over the telephone, frankly, contradicts all the advice that I would give to any donor contemplating giving to a charity they otherwise don't know very well.
One of the risks in airing this story is that you may not feel inclined to give to charities anymore. We certainly hope that does not happen. But here's some advice. Be selective about your donations. We're told that too many people give $5 or $10 to anyone who calls. Far better to pick your charity and send in your money. Don't wait for calls or request letters, and that will save everyone a great deal of money.